Hi, everyone, and welcome to SEG's live webinar discussion, The Customer Success Strategy That Drives Growth and Valuation. I'm Paul LaChance, Chief Industry Strategist, Technologist, and Evangelist with SEG. I'm also a former founder and CEO of a SaaS organization that has lived the challenges around the customer success journey. I'm excited to host today's session. The discussion should take about 45 minutes, after which we will answer questions from the audience. To submit a question at any point during the webinar, please just click on the Q&A button at the bottom of the Zoom app. At SEG, we are committed to providing meaningful insights and best practices to the software community, especially in a market that continues to evolve. For too long, customer success has been viewed as a reactive support function, something that steps in after the sale rather than a true driver of growth. But in today's SaaS landscape, customer success has become one of the most powerful levers for increasing revenue, improving retention, and driving company valuation. In this session, we'll explore how leading SaaS companies are turning customer success into a strategic growth engine by aligning with overall value proposition, reducing churn, unlocking expansion opportunities, and influencing the metrics that matter most to investors and buyers. So whether you're a CEO, operator, or CS leader, you'll walk away with practical strategies to build a customer success system that delivers sustainable, profitable growth. Join us today as Jeff Novak and Haneen Schumann both bring amazing experience running superior customer success organizations ranging from small startups to large enterprise. With that, I'd like to ask Haneen and Jeff to introduce themselves in that order, and we'll jump into our discussion.
Hi, everyone. I'm Haneen Schumann. I'm Vice President of Global Customer Success at Iptura. For the last decade, my journey with customer success started a decade ago with a small company that had no CS organization. Since then, I've created CS teams from scratch, navigated them through hypergrowth, and also all the way up to creating a global customer success organization in a PE-backed company. I'm based in Winnipeg, Canada, where everyone is eagerly awaiting summer, and I'm really excited to share all my insights with you all.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jeff Novak. I'm the founder of ATX Growth Advisors. First, Paul and SEG, thanks for having me on this webinar. And for all of you who have joined and are in attendance, thank you for coming. We're excited to be talking. So at ATX Growth, we work with growth phase and scaling SaaS and technology companies, really helping them think about how to drive growth and value creation with post-sales growth strategies and how to implement better commercial operating systems. Personally, I've been kind of a passionate fan of customer-led growth throughout my entire career. I've been in B2B SaaS for about 15 plus years as a mix as both an operating leader. So I've been in several startups and private equity-backed SaaS and technology companies. So in that grind of growing companies, as well as a consultant and advisor. Previously, I was with Deloitte in the customer success practice, helping large enterprise technology companies with customer success transformation. And now I'm focused on, as I said, private equity backed and scaling companies. Personally, I live in Austin with my wife, our two daughters, and our two adorable dogs. And with March Madness kicking off today, I will just say I am a UCLA fan, hoping for some miracles in the tournament this year. So looking forward to a great conversation with everybody.
Awesome. Thanks, Jeff, and thanks, Haneen. I'm going to kick things off with a slide that you might even consider a bit sensational. This content that we're going to discuss today is important as it can not only help your organization be stronger, more operationally efficient, and more profitable today, but it can also grow the value, the enterprise value of your organization. Elevated customer success will improve all types of metrics, which we'll discuss for your organization. And in this example here, over the period of time that this organization had elevated success, they were able to increase the value of their organization, more than double the value of the organization from an $80 million enterprise value to $166 million. This is possible, and that's why this content is very important. We're going to come back to this slide later at the end of the webinar where I explain the math and how that happens. But first, we're going to start by talking about defining customer success. And actually, I'm going to have a poll put up on the screen. If you could please just take a moment or two and read these and show where are you in your CS journey today? Awesome. I'm seeing a lot of responses come in. I'll give everybody another moment or two. All right, great. I'll go ahead and end the poll. This gives us a very good indicator, and I'm going to share the results so that everybody can see them. Looks like we're skewed in that more early phase, established but needs improvement. So why don't I go ahead and stop sharing here, and I'm going to hand it off to Jeff. Jeff, why don't you talk us through what is customer success?
Yes, thanks, Paul. And thank you all for the poll. That's helpful context. So we'll try to guide kind of the way we talk and what we cover here accordingly. So first, just a simple definition of customer success. And really this, the sort of beginning here is just to set the foundation of what we mean by customer success and the scope of it. And then we're going to get kind of deeper into this as we go through the discussion. So customer success is really about helping customers achieve their desired outcomes. Fundamentally, that is the goal of customer success. And that can occur through the interactions of customer success and the people as well as the product. And we have product here so we don't lose sight of the fact that product plays a key role in delivering CS, not just humans. CS has been around since the late 90s, but really kind of came into its popular phase when Salesforce started it in 2005. It's been through quite a run of maturity and growth, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So Paul, let's go to the next slide where a little bit of a foundation of what customer success means today and how we're thinking about it for the sake of this discussion. So it really is kind of a combination of roles, functions, capabilities that come together to help customers be successful. And so in that regard, think of customer success as a team sport, not a singular function. So first here, where we're talking is everything after the acquisition of a customer, right? So this transaction closes and the rest of their life cycle with the organization, that's really what customer success covers. Now, within that phase or life cycle, there are several jobs to be done. If you're familiar with the concept of jobs to be done, it's basically breaking down, the work that gets done, whether it's by an individual or multiple teams. So a little bit about what's here left to right. So onboarding, really, that's making sure that your customers get started successfully, helping them get configured and off the ground, right? Then typically you also need some type of customer support, reactive issue resolution. That's usually a combination of self-service and customer service reps, right? Solving technical issues as they arise. Then from a proactive adoption standpoint, right? This focus on helping customers use the product, right? Continue to get value from the use cases and what they're trying to accomplish when they made the purchase in the first place. Health monitoring and risk management. Now you need a mechanism and some process by which you are proactively understanding whether customers are taking the right action and whether they've gotten off their happy path or ideal progression so that you can proactively surface risk before it becomes a churn issue. Customer value management is really speaking to the notion of having a true process for defining, measuring, and validating value received with your customers. And then ultimately, the renewal and expansion motions, the commercial activities that you need to sort of execute contracts and keep the customer moving through those commercial motions. So that's your jobs to be done. And then there's a combination of roles that are deployed against customer success today. Some organizations have all of these, some have a portion of them. I won't read all of them. There's kind of relatively common roles out there, especially for this audience. What I would highlight here is, first, I want to take your attention all the way to the far right-hand side, product experience. I think increasingly teams are looking at how to have some of these activities done by their product team, not just by customer success resources. I think that's an important trend and an important consideration for teams, that product should absolutely have a seat at the table for all of this. And otherwise, you see a number of roles, specialists, CSMs, and account managers that collectively deliver that customer experience. Okay, let's talk a little bit about impact. Paul set the stage up front, that customer success really can deliver value creation and growth. And here's four ways to think about that. First is on the topic of minimizing customer churn, and think about measuring that through gross revenue retention, right? Gross revenue retention is essentially what is your starting ARR, less churn and less downsell. So maximum that number can be is 100%. Getting it to 90% or greater is really kind of the general target. And that is an indicator of the underlying health of the business, right? Quality of the customer base and revenue base. Next, then you think about the degree to which you can drive organic growth, which is measured through NRR. Now, NRR takes GRR and essentially adds expansion revenue, right? So now we're taking a look to understand to what degree do we have land and expand motions that allow us to organically grow our customers over time. Which brings us to durable customer growth, which is really customer lifetime value and how long can you retain those customers and maintain that gross profit over multiple years, right? Lifetime value is essential not only for building enterprise value over time by keeping customers and growing them, but in today's landscape, the acquisition of a new customer, typically that sort of ratio of paying back the ARR takes anywhere from 2 to 3 years. So you need to keep a customer for 2 to 3 years just to break even on acquiring them in the first place, right? So lifetime value is essential to make sure that from a enterprise value or even multiple on invested capital that you're positive in that regard. And then last, you can't lose sight of profitability, and especially in this environment. So cost to retain is essentially looking at all of the operating costs, the customer success team and related operating costs that go against the ARR that they manage. And the benchmark, generally speaking, in the industry today is that number should be somewhere in the 10 to 15% range, right? And that really puts a huge onus on customer success teams to not only deliver on the promise that's on the left hand of this slide, but do it very efficiently. So that gives you a sense of how to think about the levers of customer success for value creation. Actually, Paul, I want to make a point here to transition from that, which is if you think about what's on that prior slide, what's not here is the customer, right? These are things that benefit the company, and we're in the business of customer success, so we can't lose sight of the customer, which takes us to the next slide. I paused too long for you, Paul, there.
No worries, no worries.
So what this slide shows is some data from a gentleman by the name of Greg Danes. He's got a firm called ChurnRx. He does excellent research and insights on churn and what drives churn. And so if you don't know him, I would check him out. But what you see here is two charts. Let me walk through what these charts are. On the left-hand side, it's a measure of the retention rate of customers based upon their perception of value received. So whether they got minimal value, expected value, or superior value. And what you see is expected value or above drives 4 to X higher retention, right, than missing that value expectation. On the right-hand side is NPS mapped against length of contract. So NPS scored on a scale of 0 to 10. So you see all of the scores and relative periods of time. And I'm not to suggest that there isn't like a slight curve there, but fundamentally speaking, what that's showing you is that NPS is not a very good predictor of retention. And so I use this, I have opinions of NPS. There's a lot of opinions about NPS, not to suggest that NPS isn't a useful metric. But I think the key takeaway here is to really understand that you must have a measure of tracking customer value if you want to be able to successfully predict retention and consistently drive retention. Haneen, I know you've got some anecdotes there. I'll let you jump in.
Yeah, Jeff, I agree with your sentiment. And especially when you think about growing your business and positioning it for an exit. I've went through multiple mergers and integrations of companies, and one interesting situation I was in where a private equity firm that was trying interested in acquiring one of the businesses that I was managing, they wanted to see our NPS, and we showed them all of that. And then they had an excellent question of, okay, your NPS tells us which of your customers are happy, are unhappy. But do you know, or are you measuring why they are unhappy, and what are you doing about that? And we were actually very well positioned to answer, because we could see the value that our customers are getting out of our system, and we were able to articulate that. And they were very impressed and interested that we were, even though we were at the time a small company, we were able to articulate the value the customer is getting out of our system, which definitely increased our positioning in that discussion. Think about it this way. Satisfying the customer is always something we all want to do, but a lot of happy customers leave you. And it's the customers that can articulate the value of the system they are getting from you are the ones that are going to stick around, because especially in a market where budget and cut cost is high focus, you want to make sure that your customers are able to defend the value that they are getting out of your system.
Once again, we hear how important value is across all aspects of a SaaS organization. Great story. So we now have a good definition of what customer success is. It is an evolving SaaS landscape. So I think the changes that we're seeing, setting the stage. Let me hand that back over. I think it's to Jeff, and you can talk about this landscape we're in.
Thank you, Paul. I think most of the folks that are on this call probably are very well versed in what's on this slide. So I'll cover it briefly, but really I think it is important to know what has been driving in the past where we are today. So quickly, evolution of profitable, efficient growth. Gone are the days of grow at all costs. So SaaS organizations need to be hyper-focused on efficiency and margin while also achieving growth. Demand fundamentals have changed. Buyers have reduced spending. All right, they're scrutinizing more increasingly, they're consolidating vendors, which is really leading to headwinds on both acquisition, where ARR growth has slowed substantially the last few years. Sales cycles are extending, and customer acquisition costs are increasing as well as companies try to find new ARR. Likewise, churn is increasing as companies are looking to reduce their footprint and are asking for price reductions as well. So all of this is putting quite a lot of pressure on the organization holistically and driving new expectations for customer success. Okay, so let's talk about some of the shifts that are taking place as a result of this. So first is, traditionally customer success started as a relationship-oriented business. Let's put CSMs in front of customers. Let's keep them happy. Let's separate them from commercial activities. And that is no longer the case. Increasingly now, customer success leaders and teams are expected to be commercially oriented, own revenue, and be comfortable with talking about revenue. Likewise, customer success should not be considered a cost center anymore. It really should be considered a profitable growth driver, as both it owns and influences revenue, but also operates with unit economic efficiency and a hyper-focus on optimizing resources to be profitable. I'll pause here for a moment. Haneen, from your perspective, how are you seeing this play out in your world?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen this. I've managed teams that were exactly the left side of this, and I've helped move those teams towards the right side of that, mainly because early on in the company journey, you focus, like you said, on happy customers, build the relationships. But eventually, as you progress in that journey of growth and increasing your revenue, you're going to get to a point where you're asking yourself, okay, I'm having all these customers, how can I grow them? And what are things I can do internally to make that happen? And the answer, eventually everyone gets to that answer, is that what can the CSMs do more to contribute to the revenue story, right? And I like to give people kind of like practical examples of how you do this. How do you go from, oh, my CSMs only manage the relationship, to my CSMs now care about the revenue and are incentivized to think about that. So think about the customer, but also think about your company. And it's simple things like, do you have segmentation of your customers? Do you have them tiered? Are your CSMs incentivized and have bonus plans? Can they see their own book of business, and can they have those discussions of growth and incremental revenue outside just the conversations of, is the customer happy? Is the customer using what they are having? I think all of that are like good practical ways to think about that shift from the left to the right.
Absolutely, well said. I think this is a shift that has been long in the making, and some people are well ahead of that trend, and others are coming along. Okay, thank you for that. So further down the page, right? CS really started as a function, but today, as we said at the beginning, I think it's important to think of it as an organizational mindset. Not only the collection of post-sales functional teams, but really the entire go-to-market team should be aligned around customer success. The shift from satisfaction to customer value, which we talked about earlier, and really the importance of understanding how you deliver value. Bespoke processes to holistic systems design. So customer success is a relatively new industry still, and frankly lacks a lot of standard processes and ways of doing business. It has kind of grown up in that regard. And in order to achieve the promise that is set forth with customer success today, you really need to have a kind of a purposeful, holistic system design approach to how you orchestrate your entire customer success motion and organization, which relates to also having a prescriptive engagement model. So, historically, there has been a reliance on CSMs and their heroics to basically be the face of the customer and to kind of figure out on the ground what's needed, when, how, and where. And frankly, that drives a lot of burnout, a lot of issues with CSMs. And we need to shift to much more prescriptive engagement models and how we identify the work to be done and who does the work. And then last thing on this is really how to leverage technology and self-service. So for several years, there has been this idea of tech touch or self-service as a segment, and thinking of how you put your SMBs and lower mid-market customers into a tech touch motion. Fundamentally, any SaaS business today should have digital as a foundation to how they operate. End to end, having the ability to orchestrate customers all the way through, that will benefit SMB all the way up to enterprise. These are kind of the foundational shifts that are happening today, that we're about to go deep into some of these.
Awesome. Well, we've got a definition. We now understand the evolving landscape. This is the point in the webinar where we're going to talk about the solution, practical solutions, the key pillars to modernizing customer success.
So what you see here is really the right-hand side of the prior slide, formatted in a much more compelling way. And essentially, think of these as the pillars of how to operate and optimize customer success today. Now, we don't have time to go through all of these in this session, so we're going to just focus on a few of those today. And if you think just sort of going clockwise from the top, that's how we'll move through this. So we'll first go a little deeper on customer value. Then we'll talk about how that comes into systems design and the engagement model, as we were just discussing, and then ultimately talk a little bit about digital automation and AI as well, and how that's playing out in customer success today. Okay. So what we wanted to do is offer a relatively practical way to think about customer value. And so what we're going to go through here is an illustrative framework to show you, how to think about value from an outside-in customer standpoint. So first, what you see here is, an articulation of value through the customer's lens. There are and by the way, the example that we have here is HubSpot. So as you think about the content here, think of HubSpot as the software provider in this particular example. So think of your personas, those key personas that you serve. They've got jobs to be done. They wake up every single day having, their objectives in their profession and in their job description, which is intended to deliver some type of outcome for their organization and a key metric. this is how they are evaluated. This is what their responsibility is, right? So if we take the marketing manager here, right, they're looking to improve information capture and activate website visitors. Why? Because they are in the business of increasing qualified leads, right? And they're going to be measured by MQLs and conversion rate. Like that is their job to be done. Now, conversely, then on the other side of this page, right, is really then connecting a company's solutions, use cases, however you might want to call it, to those jobs to be done. So here you see, connecting the use cases of, lead capture and traffic awareness or advanced analytics and reporting, and articulating the impact of those use cases in terms of the customer, right? Those success metrics represent what matters to the customer and what they're going to be evaluated on. So this is a mechanism to think about, how do I understand my customers and what they're trying to achieve? And how do we connect that, right, to the things that we do, and ultimately add metrics and ROI that is relevant to the customer. And you could think about what's on the right-hand side. Each of those are essentially like mini value paths, right, that you're selling to the customers. And so, you would have some portfolio of those value paths, right, that collectively help customers move through your product and get increasing value over time. Now, this is not just for customer success, but really this construct could benefit the entire organization, right? So when you think about going through this process, Paul, if you'll load the bottom there, this is really going to benefit all of your go-to-market teams. And frankly, customer success may not even be the ones, or should be the ones, who would define this in the first place, right? But marketing is going to have a better ability to sell value. Sales is going to be more effective at solution discovery and selling solutions. Product is going to know what to build, what telemetry is needed, and then customer success will play the role of guiding customers down those value paths to get the value they need.
Yeah,
So
and
here is a
something I'll
practical
add
way.
here,
Sorry, honey.
something I'll add here as well is your customer value framework becomes a thread that goes all the way from the start of the journey of a prospect with your company all the way to becoming a loyal and advocate customer. And that is, it reflects as an excellent and a positive customer experience, and the continuous one.
Absolutely.
Customer value to me has always been such an important part. If you're just starting your CS journey here, and there's been some of this mapping done in the marketing and sales side, can you start with that information as you're starting to build it as a CS leader? Can you use that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, like I said, I think this is, there are a few CS leaders who should probably own this, but I think that oftentimes if it hasn't been done, CS leaders might be the ones who suggest we need to get this done, right? But this really should be a cross-organizational activity.
Once
Yeah,
again,
it's
customer
definitely
value comes in.
it's definitely a cross-functional effort, but I've seen it multiple times started by customer success because they want to have the richer conversations with customers with retention in mind.
Awesome. Awesome.
Absolutely. Okay, so we're going to build on that notion of customer value. Before I go through the content on the slide, I want to paint a visual picture for everybody thinking about systems thinking and systems design. So fundamentally, a SaaS business is a gigantic system. The flow unit is customers. We are looking to acquire customers and bring them into the system and keep them for as long as possible, right? That is the fundamental system with a whole bunch of subsystems. So if you think about on the sales side, right, we have a sales process and a sales cycle, which is essentially the system, right, to acquire customers. And sales has some very well-defined, very well understood systems to manage that. Customer success, a little less mature in terms of the kind of the well understood and consistent systems for managing the post-sales cycle. And so what we want to tease up to you is one way to think about how to systemize this post-sales life cycle. So let's start with the middle here, which is customer value. And as we said earlier, right, you need to understand how you're going to deliver measurable results. And I would think of this as a system unto itself as well, where you prescriptively define a customer value management process, where you are consistently defining, measuring, and validating how customers are getting value, full stop. But this doesn't happen magically. You need some orchestration layer that sits on top of it, which is a set of activities that your teams are performing on a daily basis to essentially impact the customer and drive them towards those value milestones, right? And if you can effectively align those activities and that experience orchestration, right, you can drive customer value and have customers get the outcomes that they're looking to achieve. And ultimately, that's when you're going to realize financial impact. That's when you're going to see GRR, NRR, LTV. And so think of this as a conceptual design for how to orchestrate your systems and orchestrate what your team is doing, right, to deliver success. I think as well, for this page, sort of top to bottom, think of it as leading to lagging indicators. A lot of you are being asked to give answers on the bottom, right, which is fundamentally a lagging indicator, right, of what's happening up above. And I would suggest that you need to have a KPI and metric system in place that allows you to track predictive leading indicators up above so that you have a confidence and reliability in your ability to deliver the bottom. Okay, so let's take this conceptual design. Let's get even more pragmatic with it. So what you see here is those three concepts now translated into a customer journey and kind of pipeline sales cycle construct, if you will, right? So what you see here is far more detail now around how you would define, right, the set of steps that are your experience orchestration activities that your teams and your product would deliver, right, with customer value moments and milestones threaded into that so that your teams understand how the activities that they are performing are delivering impact for the customer. And then lastly on this, think about connecting that to your CRM system as well, right? So within your CRM, setting the pipeline stages for that multi-year renewal that essentially tracks against this customer progression and gives you the ability to track volume, cycle time, progression rate, right? So you can understand the risk of your revenue and how your revenue is performing through these cycles, right? So this is the way to sort of take that conceptual design that we talked on the prior page and kind of bring it to the ground level in terms of configuring it. Now, once you've got this, the next step would be to then map your engagement model, right? So how do your teams then own and deliver each of these steps? Think of it as fundamentally, there's some RACI model to be flushed out here between the various teams. Who owns which of these stages? What are the handoffs? And you really need to look through this in a way to ensure that everything is balanced and reasonable, and your teams can actually deliver upon this without being overwhelmed or dropping the ball for the customer. And then lastly, once you've got that figured out as well, the third and last component of this is really the digital experience that we talked about in terms of that digital first foundation. And so think of this as mapping to the top level, which is for all of those steps of experience orchestration, you should have the ability to deliver that digitally, leveraging product telemetry and other data-driven signals that essentially allow you to guide any customer, right, enterprise or SMB, through a set of activities with key accelerators, nurturing, et cetera, right, that you would put against that digital motion. Now, we're not getting into the depths of how to do all that, of course, but really what the intent here is to show you how you can take the idea of customer value and helping customers get to, you know, their outcomes, and then truly kind of configure a full operating system or to operationalize that. I'll pause there. Haneen, anything to add?
I think this is a good segue to the next slide, and I want to go back to the results of the poll. We kind of noticed that the majority of the audience is around like the early maturity of CS. So I want to make sure that everyone understands that this is all what we're talking about here is really a crawl, walk, jog, and then run concept. So we don't expect an organization that is at the early stage of CS maturity to go all the way to be able to articulate value and link it to return on investment very quickly in a short period of time. There are stages to go through. And I've gone through that through the progression of the different companies that I've managed and the different CS teams. If we look at the screen, we're looking at all the jobs to be done that Jeff articulated in previous slides. And those are things that we need to do in our company post-sales for customers to be successful. In general, what I've seen in early stages of maturity in CS, and Paul, we can go to the next thing here. In general, we tend early on to think about the CSMs as the heroes, right? And there was a statistics that Jeff shared with me that I was like, oh, that's a very interesting statistic. Apparently, CSM is the 11th most quoted job in a recent research that was done. And it's mainly because we're asking them to do a lot, right? But in asking one resource to do a lot, we're also missing on the advantage of specialization. And also, we're not setting ourselves for scale as we grow, especially if you're going through hypergrowth. So you want to think really about how you should progress in adding scope or removing scope. And in general, what usually tends to happen is if we think about customer support, that's kind of like the first job to be done. That is a good job to be a dedicated resource outside a CSM's job. The next one that also requires a lot of dedicated skills, project management skills, is the onboarding and implementation. So the progression I've seen is CS tends to mature by dedicating resources for support, dedicating resources for onboarding, and then all the way to the right, we start to think also about what are the skills that we need from people that are managing the commercials, negotiations, part of the relationship with the customer. What we're left with is what's in the middle, and that's really all the discussion that Jeff has had in the previous slides, that these are the three jobs that articulate that you focus on value, you can help your customer articulate that value, you can help your employees identify the risk and eventually mitigate the churn in a much better way than you are doing it now with one hero CSM on board. So we want you to think about, we don't expect people or companies to be doing all of this way from the beginning, but we also don't want you to go through some of the mistakes that we've made and learned from in like keeping the CSM hero team all the way to a point where you realize that that's not really helping your gross retention and your net retention. Anything to add, Jeff?
No, you covered it perfectly.
Okay.
I will say in 2025, it's hard to have a discussion on any topic in SaaS and not cover automation and AI.
Absolutely.
It's reshaping all of our lives on a daily basis. So what we wanted to talk a little bit about here is what are kind of the most common and highest impact use cases that we're seeing in SaaS right now in customer success, where they're leveraging automation and AI. And I would think about it really on three dimensions that you see here. The first is essentially taking things off of people's plates, right? So leveraging automation to take redundant, administrative, repetitive tasks off of the plates of customer success and other customer success team members, excuse me. All right, that's sort of first and foremost the core use case there. Next is then how do you, given that you've freed up more time so that CSMs and other team members can focus more on customers and higher value impact, how do you augment those experiences by delivering better insights, giving them better materials and preparation for those conversations so that they show up far better prepared and are far more proactive in those conversations. And then last is really amplification of surfacing insights across the team, across accounts, across the organization by leveraging AI to find patterns and themes and unlock insights across your entire data set in ways that would have been extraordinarily difficult to do before AI, right? So these are really kind of where we're seeing the primary use cases, not a lot of like actual interaction with customers, but really allowing the teams who do interact with customers to be far more effective in those moments and how those drive value. So we wanted to talk about a couple of examples. Haneen, I know you've got a few You want to share with us some of the ways you're using AI today?
Yeah, and with AI, I would say we're all on the crawl walk side of things because we want to make sure that we really understand how to use it effectively and is it giving us the impact that we think it will. And in the organization I'm in, we like to start things, simple, right? And the first simple example that is very easy for everyone to start with is it's really old news that CSMs need to take minutes of meetings during their meetings and spend like 30 minutes after the meeting to document them, put them in their CRM, and then send to the customer. That's where AI can be very helpful. There's a lot of tools out there. Even Microsoft's tool would help tremendously with that. For me, this is a job that should never take any time, significant time of a CSM job anymore. We need to really think about how AI can help with that. When we think about the amplification side, think about all the time we all spent on analyzing CSAT feedback or NPS feedback and finding themes in these. That's an old news as well. You can have an AI tool, it can quickly give you kind of like the themes of the feedback across a lot of unstructured data. And if I go back to the augment part of it, that is where the power, and I'm really excited about that, is I don't want to be having or seeing CSM spending time going into multiple systems and multiple email threads and trying to figure out what happened with this customer in the last 90 days, preparing executive briefs, all of that. AI tool would be tremendously helpful in that because it can look into different insights from notes from different people in different systems and provide a very effective summary. And then the CSM is just articulating or adjusting the messaging or the positioning of this information to the benefit of what they plan to do with the customer.
Awesome. Well, we've made it to the last section of this presentation. Amazing content thus far. And I want to emphasize what Hanina and Jeff have both said. This is definitely a crawl, walk, jog, run. There's a lot of amazing content in here. It's to get you excited to go deeper if you're on that early part of your journey, or motivate you if you're on that other end to go even deeper. So let's see how this translates, because elevating your customer success is not only going to help you today, but it's also going to help you in the future in terms of growing your enterprise value. So Software Equity Group, we're an investment banker, M&A, sell-side advisor. Our job is to take our clients to market if they want to sell. So we really understand what the buyers out there are looking at for attractive organizations, both in the deals we run, as well as we have a survey that we query the market. We send it out to tons of private equity and strategic buyers, asking them what makes an attractive SaaS company in today's market, because these things do ebb and flow. And overwhelmingly right now, strong retention is the number one factor. Focusing on the blue bars on that left-hand side of the screen here, as they're related to the webinar, profitability, profitable leaning rule of 40, so the combination of your EBITDA and your growth rates are also very important. And of course, growth. Now, if you think about the webinar today, we talked about a number of characteristics, KPIs, metrics that will directly influence the positive aspects of what buyers are looking for: minimizing churn or improving your gross revenue retention, enabling organic expansion, improving NRR, delivering durable customer growth, optimizing cost efficiency, all of which will play into improving gross profit and EBITDA margins. If you do a good job with those characteristics, you will increase the value of your organization. I'll illustrate this in an example. So this example right here, and this kind of ties back to that first slide I talked about earlier today, and we're going to focus on gross retention for this one, although all the characteristics will be a positive impact here. Company A on the left here, this is sort of pre-churn improvement. They're churning 15%. Their gross revenue retention is at 85%. That's not a great number in today's market. And it's an area that if it was my organization, I would be focusing on how can we improve that. Well, the company's growing, they're upselling, they're adding new business. They have a 15% growth rate, but they suffer from what we often call leaky boat syndrome. They're having to make up for that churn by finding revenue in other places. And as we heard from Jeff and Haneen in this changing landscape, that's just not going to work anymore. And we know that the buyers do not want to see churn that we see here. You have to make improvements, and you can do that through the methods that we learned today. For the example here, we cut the churn in half. Now that's a lofty goal. You're not going to do that all at once. Again, crawl, walk, jog, run. Talking to the panelists before the call today, even if you implement the basic aspects of this presentation today, you're going to see an improvement in your gross revenue retention, 3%, give or take. I mean, you're going to see improvements right off the bat. In time, can you cut that churn in half? Absolutely. You're probably also going to improve your upsell, although I left that at the same number right there, and you're going to be bringing in new business. But you've had a really nice improvement to the way your business runs. The chart in the upper right-hand corner shows how does that help your business as you're running it? Well, you're going to be more profitable. You're going to have more revenue. You're going to have easier, happier customers. It's going to make things a lot better. Where it really starts to show the value is in how it improves the overall value of your organization. So the dark blue line is the company before the improvements, and the light blue line is after. When companies are evaluated, it's done on a number of different ways. For the example here, we're doing it on a multiple on your ARR, your annualized recurring revenue. If you have poor churn, you are not going to get as many multiples. You're going to be at a lower, and you may not even get an offers at all. Automatically, as you improve your gross revenue retention, you're going to be measured at a higher multiple. And when you add the magic of compounding revenue with that, and as you continue to improve that gross revenue retention and as well as net and other areas, this is where things have significant increase to the value of your organization. And in this case here, 80 million to 166 million. This company is more than twice as valuable as a result of making these changes. And it doesn't just stop there. If you're going to go through a process, if you've taken care of the aspects we've talked about in this webinar, your process is going to go smoother. Buyers will have better interview calls with your customers and be impressed with the satisfaction they have. Buyers love stability. You will hear them use words like durability or a durable revenue stream, less risk of churn. There's always a correlation between valuation and risk. SEG, we publish reports on this. We have our 20 factors report where we break down not just gross revenue retention, but all of these key qualitative and quantitative factors. We have our buyer survey guide and other resources that can go into this in more detail. And of course, you can always reach out and talk more. So again, this content that we talked about is very important because it will help you in the long run and in the short run. So as we wind this down, the key takeaways that I just will give a quick summary on: crawl, walk, jog, run. Very, very important. No matter where you are, you can move forward. But leaders must align expectations with organizational maturity. Success requires a phased approach. Redefine CS expectations, build support handoffs, gradually shift from CSM focus to value-driven conversations. Basically aim for progress, not perfection. CS is a profitable revenue engine. Customers' success should drive growth, not just retention. Assign books of business. Incentivize growth discovery. Track CS qualified leads to demonstrate impact on pipeline and NRR. Customer value fuels growth. Customers who see clear value are more likely to expand. Build simple, defensible value stories that champions can articulate, starting with time savings and progressing to measurable financial outcomes. Intentional design enables scale. Scalable CS requires deliberate structure, set clear goals, define daily actions, and use tools like cadence scores to help CSM stay proactive and reduce churn risk. And as we just talked about before, improve profitability today and your enterprise value in the future. So that winds up our primary part of the webinar today, and I'm going to pull up my questions that might have been posted. And we have a variety of them. I think what I'll do is I'll just throw them out, and as I do, both Haneen and Jeff, you guys can comment. So first one here, as a company that has not started major investment in customer success, how and where should I start? Haneen, you want to go first on this?
Yes, absolutely. So if we're talking about an organization that the maturity is at the start of CS, and you're asking yourself, how do I start? You have a couple of good paths. I'll take one, and then Jeff, I think you can help me with the second one. The first one is you can identify someone in your organization that would be a good fit to be tasked with building the CS organization. Or you can find in the market a CS leader that can help you with that. And the focus can be mainly we want someone that's dedicated, that's going to think about how to implement everything we said. They're focused day and night on gross retention, net retention, and how to build all the operations around your systems today to help you get to the value framework and the specialization of the skills in the post-sales journey. Now, if you don't want to recruit internally for that, and you believe you have a team and you just need an advice, I think, Jeff, this is where you can help with an advice around that.
Jeff, anything to add?
I just realized I put myself on mute. Sorry. So, yeah. So adding to what Haneen said, which I agree with, I think, where I would guide folks to think about first and foremost is whether or not you can at least articulate what the experience is, right? What the post-sale experience is, and if you can't do that, you probably want to figure out how you define what is happening after you close a transaction and how you actually kind of scope that experience. I pounded the drum a fair bit on customer value during the discussion, so I wouldn't reiterate that, other than, I mean, I do think that is a foundational starting point for any company, and you don't even need customer success for that. Just having some mechanism of knowing why your customers are buying from you, how do they get value? I think asking any SaaS company should be asking themselves that question and feel confident that they can answer it, right? And then from there, what is an experience? How do you lay out that experience so you have some sense of what the job to be done is post acquisition? I think, to Haneen's point, the challenging thing for early stage companies is, how do you find someone who can both think strategic and sort of design all of that, but also probably play the role of IC, right? And actually be a CSM by day and a strategist by night. And that can be difficult. And so I think that's where you can also look for advisors, short-term help to come in and maybe help lay the roadmap or the vision for where you can go with CS.
I mean, I'll add to that too, and Jeff's not giving himself enough credit. That's what he does. Like, when you look at the value to the organization, current and long term, and just to have a smoother running operation, if this is overwhelming, there are advisors out there, or just continue. It's great that you came to this webinar today. Just continue to find help, be it external or internal. Awesome. Second question, I'd love to hear more specifics from Haneen about how you measure and report on value instead of NPS. Is it time cost saved to customer, revenue generated for customers through your product? How do you measure that in a scrappy way at a small company without over-engineering that metric?
That's an excellent question. I, I have to also understand, in terms of your current organization, do you have visibility in how your customer is using the product? So I always tell my teams, we always start with the very basic use case that the customer bought your product for. You need to identify that base use case and figure out a way to track if that usage is happening or not. And that's going back to the crawl, walk, run. First step is, are they using the system? Are they not using the system? For those that are using the system, I would take it one notch further and think of how they're using the system. What's the key metric, going back to the slides that Jeff talked about? What's that key metric of success that they need to report to their leadership and say, I'm doing X% using this product, and this is why I'm paying this company X dollars for their solution, right? Now, it's not easy to link that to dollars or time cost saved with on your customer side without having that conversation with your customer. So you kind of like maybe pick your top 5 really collaborative customers and have that conversation with them. And when you start to have these conversations, you will figure out a quick kind of like simple math of if they do X% in my product, that is translating to them as X dollars of saving of time, cost, or whatever it is that they are using their solution for. And then try to figure out how you can put that into your CRM or CS tool if you have one. I hope that answers that question.
Sounded great. I've got time for just one more. I know there's a bunch more questions in here, everybody. We will make sure that you get reached out with a response on the remaining. But for the last question, for the webinar, what's your best advice for proving value quickly to new leaders when there is turnover of key customer contacts?
Anine, you want to go first? You want me to go?
Yeah, I mean, it kind of ties to the answer I had in the first question that was asked, because if you have a new champion, you're always at risk of having churn, right? Because the new leader probably will have different ideas about whether they need your product or not. And it is very important to articulate value quickly in that scenario. But it all goes back to, do you have a value framework? And are you following the system that we talked about?
Yeah, I will only punctuate what you said, Haneen, which is to say, more often than not, the churn or the change in sponsor that occurs, you need to have done something before that moment to prepare yourself for that moment. And what that means is having some type of value mechanism, right? Some documentation of how you've delivered value, so that you've got that ready to go when those types of change, which is inevitable, happen.
Yeah, and I would just add, be proactive about it. So if you already know you have a new champion, don't wait for them to ask you about how your solution is helping. You proactively go and say, welcome to the new job. Let's get together and let's talk about how our product is helping your team. And I think they would truly appreciate that proactivity for sure.
Awesome. Well, that's all the time we have for questions right now. Again, we will be sure to get to the rest of those and reach out. So as we wrap up today's discussion, I want to extend a heartfelt thank you to the panelists. Your insights, experience, and perspective have been incredibly valuable and brought a real depth to the conversation. It was awesome. And to everybody who joined us, thank you. We truly appreciate your time and attention and engagement throughout today's session. We hope you're walking away with practical strategies to elevate customer success as a core growth driver, helping your organization boost retention, unlock expansion opportunities, and ultimately drive higher valuation for your org. As always, please feel free to reach out with any follow-up questions. We'd love to continue the conversation. Be on the lookout for next month's webinar, where we will cover how strategic marketing drives SaaS M&A success. When you exit, a short survey will appear where you can share feedback or submit any additional questions. A recording of today's webinar will also be sent to your inbox. Thanks again, everybody, and enjoy the rest of your week. Thank you.
Thank you.